Just a short video today on the subject of tuning, and particularly in relation to the fact that we have movable frets. Which is both a good thing and a bad thing, isn't it, sometimes? If we have frets that are loose and they move under their own steam, that is really unhelpful. If we have frets that are too tight and we can't move them at all, that is equally unhelpful, because you can't guarantee that frets are always in the right place. And part of the reason why we don't have frets that are stuck to the fingerboard is that they are movable and we should move them to make things in tune. So one of the things that happens to me quite a lot when I coach consorts is that we get to the end of a piece and the final chord is just revolting. So we say, okay, let's tune that. And everybody gets out their tuning meter and they check their strings. And we play it again, and generally it's better, but often it's still not quite right. So we start to look at the individual notes within the chord. So let's imagine that we've got an F major chord. So the bass player is playing an F. Maybe there's another F in a treble part at the top. We get those in tune and then we come to put in the C, the fifth. And it's revolting. It needs to be up here. So you can change the pitch a little bit by moving your finger over the fret. It does make a difference, of course it does. It's risky, because if you go too far, you end up a whole semitone sharp, because you're effectively stopping the string against the next fret. So although it is possible, that's quite a risky strategy. The other thing you can do is pull the string to the side as you play, and that will raise the pitch of the note that you're playing. So that's kind of useful if you get to particularly the final chord of a piece, or you get to a long chord somewhere in the middle and you find that you're flat, you can do something about it. But you don't really want to be doing that every time you play a C, thinking, oh, that fret's a bit flat, so I'd better aim over the top all the time. So we're tuning this F major chord. The first thing you need to do is get the bass player to absolutely check that that F is good, because if we're going to tune from the bass upwards, the bottom note has to be absolutely right. So if you're the bass player, your job is to be in tune. If the F is good, your next step is to check the string that your note is on. So I'm checking the A string. That's fine. So we've got to sort out the C. That is not fine. So we need to do something about it. And so often when I say to people, okay, well, clearly the fret's in the wrong place, so we just need to move it, don't we? They look in absolute terror and say, I've never moved a fret, I don't really know how to do it. And it just shouldn't be that complicated. So the most common error when people move frets is that we say, okay, so we need to move the third fret to make the C higher. So somebody will pick up the edge of the fret and start to move this. Now, I've moved that quite a long way, but in terms of the C, it hasn't helped at all, because although I have moved the fret, and I've moved it quite a bit, I haven't moved the bit that relates to the note that I'm playing. So what I've actually done is probably made a really sharp F sharp on the bottom string, but the problem that I was trying to fix hasn't changed at all. So being really wary of that, picking up the edge of the fret and moving, you could, especially if you're tuning a note that's in the middle, you pick up the fret at either side and you end up with a sharp fret at the bottom and a sharp fret at the top, and you've made not a shred of difference to the frets that were, to the strings that are in the middle. So you need to move the bit that relates to the note that you're playing. So in this case, I need to move this side that actually relates to the A string. Now if you've got time, obviously check the fret across all of the strings, because you do want it in tune on everything. But if you're in the middle of a consort playing session and you don't want to spend 10 minutes checking everything, just move the bit that relates to the note in question. So now, problem solved, and our C is good. It does rely on your whole consort agreeing on a pitch and on a temperament in particular. So it's no good tuning your frets diligently to equal temperament if the person next to you has their box set at 6, and they're calibrating from C, and the person next to them has their box also set to 6, but it's calibrating the temperament from an F, you're going to end up with lots and lots of different varieties of a C. So if you're not sure that everybody has their box set to the same thing, just choose one person's tuning meter and tune to an agreed person, an agreed temperament. And don't be afraid of moving frets around. You can probably see on here, I've got this fret, it's at quite an angle, and it's fine. It'll be because at some point I've needed to adjust one side or the other on one string. As your strings get older, they tend to stop slightly sharp, so you'll find that there's a string where you could do with the fret being pulled back a little bit. If that happens too much, time to change the string. And it's one of the reasons why when you change your top string, it's quite sensible to change at least the top two, and if you're feeling really enthusiastic, then the top three, because otherwise you end up with strings of really varying ages, and then the fret needs to be sort of angled across the fingerboard, zigzagged, to get each string in tune. But the main point, I think, is these things are meant to move, so don't be afraid of picking a fret up in the middle and moving it. It's got to be better to play in tune, hasn't it?